I'm going to wait here for a little bit for Facebook to push this out, and then I'll start.
Getting funny.
All right. Well, thank you for being here in our home tonight. Me and my wife are here tonight, so we welcome you here, and those that will be coming later on to watch. We always enjoy, or I always enjoy teaching these different subjects. A lot of them are coming to my thoughts lately, and I had a friend tell me, he said, "You're putting these things on Facebook so fast I can't keep up with them." So, but I enjoy doing it, so I hope you are too. Hi, Kathy. Glad you're with us tonight. Donna has always liked me to teach messages like for Christmas or Thanksgiving with that kind of teaching. And I was going to last week, but I was really wanting to get into John chapter 17, so that's what we did. But I just thought it might be good to do tonight, and I know a lot of people are probably preparing for Thanksgiving, so hopefully they'll come back and watch this sometime later on next week. Hi, Carol. Glad you're here. And so this is a metaphysical and allegorical Thanksgiving message. I was looking up on Facebook today. I was curious how many countries celebrate Thanksgiving. Primarily, the Thanksgiving, the way we do it, and I guess Canada, American Canada is the only national holiday, but there are actually 13 different countries that celebrate Thanksgiving in one way or another. And we've all been taught, particularly in church, if you would, but not necessary. But I think most people have been taught how important it is to be thankful. And when we are, usually we list a group of things or people or whatever that we're thankful for. But what we're going to do tonight is we're going to go into a deeper Thanksgiving as a state of an awakened awareness, as a way of living out of our oneness with the Elohim Ruwac Breath. Not begging, not trying to get more, but recognizing this completeness that already is. And so we're going to explore some key scriptures and see Thanksgiving as an inner gateway, if you would, into the most holy place. Some of you have been with my teachings for a long time. I've talked a lot about outer court, holy place, most holy place in the tabernacle of Moses. And so I'm going to use that a little bit tonight. We used to teach that there were three different realms: outer court being saved, holy place filled with Holy Spirit, and then most holy place grown up. But I don't teach it that way anymore. In the outer court, there are two realms. There's the people who are pretty much saved and trying to stay saved, trying to please God, doing works and things like that. And then within the further inner part of the outer court are people who are in the redemptive view. And they're still in the outer court because they're teaching that Jesus had to do something for them, the penal substitutionary doctrine, and lots of works. But then we see in the Bible, holy place and most holy place, but something makes that all one room, and that's when that veil was rent. The veil around before you walk into the most holy place, it was rent, and literally those both became one room. And so once you get the revelation of oneness, then you're really beginning to live in the holy, most holy place. So we want to see how gratitude lifts us out of fear, and lifts us out of lack, and lifts us out of anxiety. And true Thanksgiving is not really a holiday, but I'm not against this holiday. I do think we should be thankful for people and things and food and everything the original people did when they came here to give thanks. But this metaphysical or allegorical understanding is an invitation to carry the spirit of gratitude with us every day, not just one day a year, and honoring one another, cherishing our moments together, and recognizing that the presence of I exist, or Elohim, and every person around the table that we're sitting at tomorrow, and also every person around the world. And so I am very grateful for you, of course. I'm grateful for my wife, my family. I'm grateful for things. But one of the greatest things I'm grateful for today is that I could see what Jesus intended to teach, that I can hear the voice of breath, Elohim, and I can live out of that. And many years I wasn't able to do that. And so this teaching, if embraced, will be, hi Hector, glad you're here. If embraced, will bring a freeing and a spiritual understanding to us. So I'm going to go over a list of several different verses, and we're going to talk about them. I'm not going to read the entire verses because it's long, the King James Version. I don't not wanting to do that. There's a lot of verses in the Bible that say give thanks, quite a few. But these are key ones. So Psalm 100, verse 4, it's literally entering into the gates of awareness. And it reads, enter in his gates with thanksgiving, and into his courts with praise. Be thankful unto him and bless his name. And that's not the full verse, but that's a lot of it. But this verse reveals a spiritual movement from the outer court awareness into this inner temple of realization where many of us are arriving at. The gates are not physical portals, but they're symbolic thresholds with consciousness that opens us, or the sacred self, and turns us inward to gratitude. When one's inner conversation shifts from lack to acknowledgement or completion, these gates of awareness begin to swing wide open. And that's what's taken place around the world with a lot of people today. So Thanksgiving is not an outer sound, real Thanksgiving, but it's an inner vibration of awareness. It aligns with this eternal rhythm and dance of breath that I talk about often. So the courts represent states of consciousness within us. The first court is where the earthly self begins to remember its source. The second court is often called, again, the most holy place. It's this inner chamber where one's awareness begins to merge with a divine knowing, realizing that I exist as one with Elohim. So the psalmist's call, be thankful, is not an invitation to flatter an external deity, but it's a recognition that gratitude is the key that unlocks our inner sanctuary of peace. That's why I said when we were teaching on John, and Jesus was feeding the 5,000 people, the thing that he did that caused that food to multiply is he offered a statement of gratitude, being thankful. And I believe being thankful for everything multiplies everything. But the most important thing is thankful for what's inside of us. So when we bless the name, it says we affirm the nature of I exist, the name that was never lost, only forgotten. The Thanksgiving, therefore, is not something that we do for Elohim. If you want to say God, that's fine. But it's the state of awareness in which we remember Elohim within. We remember that breath is within inside of every part of our being. I'm thankful for that. Then Psalms 107, 1 through 2, it's the declaration of a kinship awareness. I'm going to explain that a little bit more later. But it says, oh, give thanks unto Elohim, for he is good, for his compassion endures forever. So then it says, let the redeemed of Elohim say so. So this verse unveils this eternal nature of goodness. It gives thanks, literally means acknowledgement of the goodness already present. I'm thankful now that I know that everything that I've ever thought I needed, it's already present within inside of me. I'm thankful that I know that I don't have to depend on a God out there to touch me, to let them know that they're real or to do something. But I know that life and life abundantly is already inside of me. So this Hebrew word translated redeem is G-A-A-L, and it does not convey the idea of buying something back, but rather, again, of kinship. But it's more than kinship, it's oneness. So it speaks of one who acts out of oneness, out of responsibility, and out of unity. So the so-called redeemed are those who are awakened to their oneness awareness. We're not redeemed back to God. We never left Father. We never left Elohim. It wasn't a price to pay to redeem us. It's our willingness to wake up to our oneness. Those who realized they were never alienated from their source, but they were only asleep, if you would, not being one. So allegorically, the redeemed symbolizes the faculty within man's consciousness that once operated under separation, but now is awakened through remembrance. I've had some experiences in my life where I've studied some things, and I remembered that I always knew that. It's something. Well, it's because we have always been consecrated. We were consecrated when we were born. We had full knowledge when we came into being, but we forgot it. And so once we hear these truths, then you can really begin to remember. And that's why people have told me many times, I've always felt that way. I thought that was true. And I'm going to ask them where they got it from. And they say, I just heard it within inside myself. So again, when it says say so, let the redeemed of the Lord say so, they're not making a public confession. They're speaking truth to their inner awareness. So no matter what happens in my life, I'm saying I am one with Father. I know I'm one with Father, and nothing can separate me whatsoever. So I say so to myself. It's not a bragging thing out somewhere, but it's within. So compassion here is the eternal movement of life that never withdraws. It's a continuing flow, awaiting recognition. So thanksgiving then is the voice of this recognition. It arises naturally when awareness recalls this goodness. And thanksgiving is something that's it's an attitude that we carry with our entire life. Because if you live a life that you're not thankful, it's a pretty tough life. And there's a lot of people in the world that are not thankful at all. And they have no idea what they have. So in Jonah, I found a good place in Jonah in 2:9, there's thanksgiving in the depths. Wherever you're at, you can be thankful. Where was he at? He was in a well of mistaken identity. A well of mistaken identity. He said, I will sacrifice unto thee the voice of thanksgiving. I will pray. I will pay that I have vowed. So what he's saying here, Jonah, swallowed by a great fish, symbolizes awareness swallowed up in confusion. It symbolizes resistance to this inner calling. In the depths, if you would, Jonah discovers that no external condition can imprison the divine self. The voice of thanksgiving is the inner cry of awakening, an acknowledgement that even the darkest depths of life sometimes, the breath life is still present. And I told you guys about, well, I won't tell that story. I've told it already. I don't have that much time. But it's an acknowledgement that even the darkest depths, the breath is present. It's acknowledgement that wherever you're at, breath is always with you because you are the presence of breath. You're the presence of Father. So when we do this, it's a surrender of false thoughts and illumination of truth. So when Jonah vows to pay that I have vowed, it means he will fulfill his inner commitment to live from awakened awareness. And sometimes we have to remind ourselves of that. Because when we get back out in the world or in our thoughts or whatever, there's sometimes things come to us. We've said we're going to stay in this awareness. We're going to live out of that. But there are things that begin to drag us back. And we have to speak to ourselves. I am going to pay my vow. My vow is to me. I'm going to constantly live in this awakened awareness. And I'm going to surrender all false thoughts to the elimination of truth. So Elohim Ruwac Breath fills all awareness. Gratitude then becomes the very force that lifts Jonah. The inner consciousness out of limitation. So that's that kind of picture of him being lifted up out of limitation. And thanksgiving is the lifeline that pulls us from the depths of inherited consequences thinking into the realization that we were never lost, we were only unaware. And I have people quite often write me that they feel lost. I see people on Facebook say, I'm giving up. I don't know what to do. You're not lost. You're only unaware. There needs to be an awakening take place. And so that's important for us. And that's kind of what Jonah pictures there is awakening took place. And then Philippians 4:6-7, this is the inner exchange of conversation, or you could say prayer and peace. Paul said, be anxious for nothing, but in everything by prayer or conversation and supplication with thanksgiving, let your requests be made known to Elohim. Now, I've shared this with you before. Asking is not asking for a thing. The word ask means to ascertain and seek and to desire to know, and it will be revealed to you. So in the traditional fear-based view, this verse is making a request to an external God who might respond favorably if you approach him correctly. But Paul wasn't saying that. Speaking metaphysically, he's instructing us to transmute anxiety through thanksgiving. To be anxious for nothing means to refuse to allow outer appearances to dictate inner peace. And there's a lot going on in the world today, and a lot of people are allowing that to affect their inner peace. And we have to get to this place where I'm not getting out of my seat. What does the seat mean? It's a place at rest. So the words prayer and supplication represent inner communion. It represents an alignment. It's not begging, but it's becoming aware of the Logos life that's already present within inside of you. And then you speak that over yourself. You confirm that constantly in your life. And it doesn't have to be when things are going bad. The more you do it when things are well, the less bad things will show up in your life. Those thanksgiving is the medium of exchange between thought and manifestation. Paul said, let your requests be made known. The Greek conveys the idea of to bring into awareness what is already true of you. Many people don't know that. If we're asking for something, then we do not know that it's already true of us. So as we commune in gratitude, our consciousness rises above separation, and peace naturally governs your life. So allegorically, the restless outer man brings its burdens into the inner altar, if you would, where thanksgiving dissolves them into light. The peace of Elohim is not something given, but it's something revealed. The still vibration of the divine mind governing our heart awareness. So thanksgiving, therefore, is the action of releasing the lower vibration of fear and resting in the higher vibration of oneness. And so, again, thanksgiving dissolves all the stuff that hinders. A life of thanksgiving for who you are and speaking the truth into yourself and knowing that you are one already. And then in Colossians 3:15 through 17, it's the rule of peace, and it speaks to the language of gratitude. And part of it, I'm not reading it all, as I said, but it says, let the peace of Elohim rule in your heart awareness and be thankful. So Paul's message here is that peace is the governor of the awakened awareness. To let means what we do, let it rule, means we yield and we stop striving. We yield and we permit the divine order to function naturally within inside of us. We yield to our divine mind. We yield to the voice of breath speaking inside of us. The gratitude is the evidence that peace has taken its throne. And the divine economy, peace is not passive. It's an active equilibrium of spiritual rhythm and the dance that I talk about, where all the energies in us are harmonized in this awareness of I exist. And all this energy out there that's coming from the world, it doesn't affect us anymore. Your inward voice of peace begins to command the world. And I made a comment today on Facebook. When you know who you are, your voice commands your world. When you know who you are, your voice, your inner voice commands your world. So this heart awareness is the inner temple where the Logos dwells. And when the Logos, the creative word or the creative spiritual activity that reveals the spiritual law of abundant life, it's an intelligent activity. And when it's permitted, it dwells richly. It fills your consciousness with wisdom and understanding and peace and knowledge. And it's deep within inside of you. So thanksgiving becomes that fragrance that the indwelling Logos, that inner song of realization, is alive within inside of you. If you're not living a life of thanksgiving, and I'm not talking about for things, I'm talking about thanksgiving for what you have within inside yourself, thanksgiving that your oneness, then you don't really project peace because it doesn't keep you calm. And the voice, is when it says be still and know, that word be still means be calm and be quiet. You can't do that if you're not at peace. So when he says singing and making melodies, he describes the vibration of thanksgiving echoing through all levels of being. The truly thankful ones has ceased to struggle and has entered into the divine rest with peace ruling within inside of them. And the greatest thing that will help you is to cease to struggle. There's nothing to struggle about. I have people write me sometime and they tell me they're struggling understanding these things, or they're struggling letting go of something. You don't have to struggle. All you do is feed. You feed on the logos of the word. You feed on the truth that the word, the living logos is within inside of you. And as you feed on the truth deals with all that. I've had many people tell me, well, do I need to stop anything? No, you don't need to stop anything. You just feed. Just like a doctor tells you, you've got something wrong in your body. You don't have to fight it. You don't have to rebuke it. If they give you something to take for it and you trust them, then you just take it and you relax and you let it do its work. And so when we're studying the Logos, we need to be relaxed. We don't need to be desperately fighting for something to help us, but we relax and we do what it says, rejoice evermore and pray without ceasing. In other words, converse to yourself without seeking. And that's in 1 Thessalonians 5:16 through 18. Paul says, in everything, give thanks. Now, I used to think, how can I give thanks when there's a tornado? How can I give thanks when my loved one died? But that's not what it's talking about. In everything, you realize that I am one with breath, that I can see through what's come after me, what's trying to hinder me back. I remind myself who I am. That's giving thanks. I remind myself if a person comes after me and they're being hateful to me, I remind myself that they're my brother, they're my sister, and there's something going on in their life, but it's not about me. Because when you do that, then the most horrible thing that we do, we don't react. Because when we react, there's a lot of problems that take place. So there's a triad here. It's rejoicing, it's continual communion, and I'm talking about conversation, and it's continual thanksgiving. And these depict the natural rhythm and dance of the awakened awareness. Rejoice evermore causes us to live in this frequency of joy. Pray without ceasing points to not to endless words, but to unceasing communion within inside of you. It's a state where consciousness is constantly attuned with the breath within. And everything give thanks means that no outer condition can shake the inner knowing of oneness. Nothing formed against you can prosper. That's what Paul said. So thanksgiving is not for what happens, but it's for what is already. I'm not thankful for what's going to happen. I'm thankful for what is. So allegorically, these words reveal the daily rhythm of a consecrated awareness. Joy as an expression, joy as conversation or prayer as communion, and gratitude as realization. So the will of Elohim is not a decree, but it's a natural law of being. You know, I have 3 children. I have 9 grandchildren, 2 more by marriage, or 3. And my greatest desire for them is just to be who they are. They're sons and daughters of God. And to know who they are and just be who they are. I don't need them to do anything for me. I just want to see them living life the way they were created to live. And that's what I want for myself. That's what I want for my wife. And so there's this decree of the law of being. That's the divine design that consciousness is live within inside of me, spiritual consciousness. And I function out of the law of thanksgiving. So this law functions unobstructed. Awareness flows effortlessly then. And in such a state, every act becomes sacred and every breath becomes thanksgiving. And life is beautiful. And that's why I always say I live my life in love, because I see beauty in everything there is. I caught myself the other day, I don't know why, but I was just wanting to tell everybody around me I loved them. You know, I had this really good feeling of love, and it was overflowing in me. And I was with my wife, and she can probably tell you that 2 or 3 times I exhorted somebody, and a couple of them I told them I love them. And that's that bubbling over of a Thanksgiving life. And then we find Luke 17, 15 through 16. You can read them all later on. But this represents the one who returned. One of them, when he saw that he was healed, and this is talking about the lepers, one of them, when he saw that he was healed, turned back and with a loud voice glorified Elohim. So the lepers were cleansed by Jesus. He raised his energy level, raised their energy level, and saw through all that, and they were cleansed, but only one turned back. So I was looking at this this week. Let me get a drink here. I'm sorry, every time I start talking, I get phlegm. 10 lepers were cleansed. So These lepers represent 10 aspects of awareness, of a separated by sense thinking. 10 faculties that have been numbed by false identity, if you would. The one who returns signifies that part of this consciousness that recognizes wholeness as its natural state. That loud voice symbolizes the explicit inner declaration of union, and the act of falling at Jesus' feet represents the surrender of the little ego of illusion to the breath of awareness. One of them did that. So allegorically, the 9 who did not return picture the many thoughts that receive outer benefits but remain unawakened. We have no clue why we're blessed. We have no clue why things that go in our life, we don't know where it comes from. Sometimes we think it comes from our works or it comes from other people. But only one, the consciousness true identity, perceives the source. Thanksgiving then becomes the evidence of sight restored. In other words, you're able to see. Jesus said, I don't do anything I don't see my Father do. So you're able to see with your single eye. When we turn back in awareness, we discover that healing is not an act of divine intervention, but the awakening of our inner innate completeness. I believe that with my physical body. I believe that with my healing and my awareness. I believe the more we awaken, the more all these things function in us, because we are already healed. We already have divine health. We are already whole. As Kay started in our first teaching on living out of our spiritual resources is our divine mind. It's that inner allness of what we have. So Thanksgiving then is the moment of awareness that says, I remember who I am. And what did Jesus tell Nicodemus when he said, how do I enter into the kingdom of heaven? In the Aramaic, he said, a man must remember, I'll say a man or woman must remember who they are. Because until you know who you are, you can't live a life of thanksgiving, because you're always looking for more. I needed to have a recording in there that said amen every once in a while. My crowd's not here. 2 Corinthians 9, 11 through 12. This is the circulation of thanksgiving. And it says, part of it says, being enriched in everything to all bountifulness, which causes through us thanksgiving through Elohim. So to me, that's a real key. If we don't know what we have within inside of us, we will not be thankful. We will not even speak that into ourselves. And most people in Western Evangelical Christianity and other religions have no idea who they are, and they have no idea what they have. Therefore, we're always pleading for a God to do something. But Paul unveils the spiritual law of circulation. To be enriched in everything is to awaken to this inexhaustible abundance within Logos life. True enrichment is not accumulation, but it's awareness of sufficiency. I have all things that pertain to life and godliness. The Apostle Paul was told by Elohim when he said, free me from my struggle, which his tendency was to go back into the law. He said, my grace is sufficient for you. But that word grace is literally breath, and it's inexhaustible, and it's abundant. So true enrichment is not, again, accumulation. So the phrase causes through us thanksgiving points to this outflow when inner awareness realizes abundance. When we get to this place that we know that we lack nothing. And that's another sacred cow that we believed in, that we always had to pray to Jesus or pray to God to get, or we had to pay to tithe to get more, or we had to serve and work to get more, or whatever it is. And we've got to realize that there's nothing that we lack whatsoever. The awareness realizes abundance. It cannot help but express gratitude. And that gratitude becomes an energy, and it blesses other people. So Thanksgiving is this circulatory system of divine supply. When consciousness acknowledges abundant, it becomes a channel through this abundance to flow through us. Paul speaks of this eternal rhythm or dance. Elohim gives it through us. We offer through Elohim, and the giving multiplies itself in thanksgiving. So we give out rather than take in. We prefer helping other people than doing something to get ourselves blessed. And as we do that, it multiplies and it grows and it grows and it grows. And that's what Jesus did with the fish and the loaves of bread. He gave thanks. So the moment we realize that we are not owners, but we're expressions. I don't own anything of my, spiritually speaking. I don't own this. Everything I have is for me to bless other people with. And so that expresses abundance. The Thanksgiving then becomes endless, and every thought becomes a seed of generosity. Every breath, every movement becomes gratitude. And in this realization, lack disappears, and we live from this continuous flow of Elohim Ruwac Breath. And so spiritual thanksgiving in its purest metaphysical form is this recognition of completeness. I recognize that I'm complete. I lack nothing. I am whole. I'm not waiting to die and fly and go somewhere and be better. I'm not waiting for my ship to come in, if you would, because I've paid tithe and I'm expecting it to come back to me. I realize that I'm completely whole, and because of that, I can live in this continuous flow, and it never stops. So spiritual thanksgiving in its purest metaphysical form is that recognition. It's not bound by a season, like Thanksgiving, once a year. It's not bound by a ritual, but it's this perpetual awareness that all is contained within I exist. Father told Abraham, when Abraham asked, who shall I say sent me? He said, I exist. If he would have said, I am, like they were told, then that would imply he was something out there somewhere else. But he was saying, I exist within inside of you. I am the exist within inside every person. So when Thanksgiving becomes this lens through which we see, we no longer seek a blessing. We live as a blessing. Gratitude is the vibration of this awakened being. It's the sacred sound that rises from the altar within, and it fills the temple, if you would, of us with this awareness of light. And this is this inner conversation where sacred self speaks. The conscious awareness listens, the divine mind illuminates, and the breath empowers. All we have to do is speak and align with the divine mind. We listen to what breath says to us, and then we speak it out. So our Thanksgiving, metaphysical, is not a holiday. It's not a ritual. It's a state of awakened identity. It's a state of awareness that we live and move and exist in fullness out of our Elohim Ruwac Breath. It's this awareness that we live lives of fullness. We no longer live from need. We live from completeness. We no longer seek blessings. We live as the blessing. We no longer pray to be heard. We commune with an alignment of our exist within inside of us. Thanksgiving is the incense of this inner temple, and it's the fragrance of the awakened being. So this is the inner conversation where awakened self speaks, the conscious awareness listens, and the divine mind illuminates, and the breath empowers. And so it is. So I am not against Thanksgiving, just in case somebody's thinking about that. I love Thanksgiving. I can't wait till tomorrow. I made some pecan cake candy or whatever it is. I can't wait to serve people that. I'm enjoying my family, and I'm thankful for all of them. But the most thankful thing that I'm thankful for is what's inside of me. The divine life, the divine mind, the awareness now, the understanding now, the consciousness of oneness now. It has literally changed my life, and I know it has you. So I love all of you. I appreciate you being here tonight. I hope you have an enjoyable time with your family tomorrow. And it's not turkey that makes you sleep. It's all the cake and candy. So just eat turkey and you'll be fine. I love y'all. Bye-bye.